Bitcoin is crashing. And to be honest with you, I think that this is probably the most excitement that I've seen in this bull market. I think that Bitcoin's price will eventually recover. And I want to go into why it's crashing temporarily. Let's get started. So, like I said, Bitcoin's price crashed all the way from about $122,000 all the way down to about $109,000 just a hour or so ago. And it wasn't too long ago. It fell very quickly and then it started recovering. So it went all the way down to 109,814, and now it's all the way back up to $114,000. The main reason for why I think this is happening is that Trump said that the US will impose a 100% tariff on Chinese goods in November as the trade war between the two countries is just getting worse and it's escalating. So you can see here the president said the move was prompted by China taking an extraordinarily aggressive position on trade by announcing new export controls that would take effect next month. Trump claims the curbs affect more countries than just the US, calling them a moral disgrace in dealing with other nations. So this is just a trade war between two countries. Both countries have leaders that maybe have an ego. They want to control the market. They think that they're also the main character, just like Christine Lagarde in my video earlier today. This is going to keep happening. You're going to keep seeing that Bitcoin's price goes up, then it crashes down, then it goes up, then it crashes down, then it goes up and it crashes down. But I guarantee you that if you were to watch this video 5 years from today, so the day that I'm posting this video is October 10th, 2025. If you watch this video in 5 years, you're probably going to be experiencing something similar. You're going to see Bitcoin go from 500K to 430K. You're going to see Bitcoin go from a million to 850,000. You're going to see it go from 10 million to $7 million. You're going to see these crashes over and over and over again. It doesn't matter what the reason for the crash is. I told you today that it's because of tariffs. At some point, maybe it'll be some other thing. Another war gets started. Some country bans Bitcoin or something along those lines that really doesn't have an impact on the Bitcoin network. As you saw with the Bitcoin chart, it falls and then eventually recovers. You see people selling their Bitcoin because they react to the news and then they buy it back when things get better. They're going to keep doing this. This is just human psychology. You're going to continue to see the crashes. You're going to see the price fall and then recover and then fall again and then recover again. And I think that understanding that this will happen is one of the prerequisites of owning Bitcoin. If you don't understand that this is going to happen, if you don't understand that Bitcoin's market is going to be volatile because it is a relatively new asset compared to other assets, you're not going to get through the bull markets. You're not going to get through the 20, 30, 40% drawdowns that we see in the future. But then those drawdowns end up with a recovery of 400, 500, 600%. One of the greatest things about Bitcoin is that it is separate from that system where governments or individuals control how you use your money. In the legacy financial system, Trump has a lot more control than he should because he's in this position of power that allows him to make these statements that completely change the course of the world. But he can't do this with Bitcoin. He can't change how Bitcoin works. If you accumulate Bitcoin, then you have this asset that nobody else can control, nobody else can stop, nobody else can censor. The price will fluctuate. It'll go up and down in terms of US dollars. But I would say that that's a result of US dollars being volatile, not Bitcoin. In total, there are only ever going to be just under 21 million Bitcoin, and that's what you see here. This is the smallest unit of Bitcoin. This is 1/100 millionth of one Bitcoin, and you can see the units here. So 100 million Satoshis is one Bitcoin, 0.1 Bitcoin is 10 million Satoshis, 0.01 Bitcoin is 1 million Satoshis, and so on. So one Satoshi is 0.000000001 Bitcoin. So your goal here should be to accumulate as many of these Satoshis as possible. If Bitcoin's price is falling, that means that you're getting a discount and you're able to buy Satoshis at a cheaper price compared to whatever the price was at the peak. So let's say just a few days ago, Bitcoin's price was at 126,000. Today it's at 114,000. You're getting something like a 10% discount on the Satoshis that you buy. But at the end of the day, the price will always go up over the long term. And the reason for this is that there's a scarce number of Satoshis. As more of these Satoshis get purchased and locked away, those Satoshis aren't going to enter the market again. There are more and more Satoshis being purchased, and they're being put into vaults that are deep in cold storage and they're never going to be sold again. The people who own them plan to hold them forever. They plan to give them to their children, to their grandchildren, because they have so much wealth that they don't need to sell their Satoshis in order to pay for their lifestyle today. So your goal should be to accumulate as many Satoshis as you possibly can. My recommendation here would be to get to zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.01 Bitcoin, or 1 Bitcoin if you can. If you have that amount of wealth, get to 1 Bitcoin. But if you can only get to 100,000 Satoshis, that's perfectly fine. If you could only get to 10,000 Satoshis, build yourself up to a point where you can accumulate more than 10,000 Satoshis. If you could only get 100,000 Satoshis, maybe it would be better to invest that money into, let's say, a course or something where you learn more and you can create more value and you can accumulate more Bitcoin when the price is lower. So right now the price is lower. If you had put in the time to learn a new skill and you have cash coming in, and let's say you have that cash coming in today, you get to buy Bitcoin at this discounted price. Your goal should be to make it so that your cash flow is enough to pay for your lifestyle today and to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you need, as you want. At some point, that Bitcoin is going to replace your cash flow. It's going to replace your job as the way that you create value and you get value. And you'll be able to use that Bitcoin to buy whatever you need to. So, like I said, if you can get to 0.01 Bitcoin, that's great. If you can get to 0.001 Bitcoin, that's great. But your goal here may be to develop new skills that allow you to accumulate more Bitcoin. So, your goal may be over the long term to get to 1 Bitcoin. Maybe it'll be to get to 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.5 Bitcoin, 0.25 Bitcoin, whatever it is. Get to those numbers that you think are impossible today. If you're expecting that you'll get to 100,000 Satoshis, get to a million. If you're expecting that you'll get to a million, get to 10 million. And that's because over time, you're going to continue to see Bitcoin's price crash. You're going to see it continue to react to these pieces of news that are really irrelevant to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is separate. Bitcoin is completely separate from the current financial system. Nobody in the current financial system has any control over Bitcoin. Nobody in the current financial system can change this number here. Nobody can force anybody else to sell their Bitcoin. If the people who hold Bitcoin don't want to sell it, then it won't be sold. The price of Bitcoin, the short term price, like I said, the crash, the short term price is dedicated by short term holders, people who don't plan to hold forever. They were already planning to sell at some point, but then when Bitcoin's price crashed, they had to sell early because they got scared because they had to pay off their debts and they don't want to get liquidated, or they got liquidated by their exchange if they took on a debt against their Bitcoin at too high of a LTV. So the crash has already happened. Bitcoin's already down to $113,700. I wouldn't recommend that you sell at this point. I don't know how much lower it'll go. It could go a lot lower for all we know. My goal here is to continue to create value and to continue to serve the people around me, to continue to help the people around me to get to a certain goal in their lives, to learn about Bitcoin, to figure out what it is. And I suggest that you build a goal and you build something that you're passionate about and you continue to create value for the people around yourself as well so you can accumulate more Bitcoin and you can get to more Satoshis rather than thinking about the dollar value of your portfolio. Instead of waiting for the market to come to you where you expect the price to go up to a point where you can retire, bring the market to yourself. Buy as many Satoshis as you can so that instead of having to retire in 30 years with 0.01 Bitcoin, maybe you can retire in 10 with 1 Bitcoin. Use these crashes as an opportunity to build your stack and to get more Bitcoin so that at some point in the future, you're able to retire without having to think about what's happening in the legacy market. If you just keep accumulating over time, you're going to see that at some point, your Bitcoin is going to be worth so much that you're not going to know what to do with all the value that you have. So don't get distracted by the price. Don't get distracted by these people, these leaders who just make these claims of what they're going to do to change the world's economy. Focus on Bitcoin, focus on accumulating as much as you can, focus on creating value so that over time you can accumulate more and more Bitcoin and you don't have to worry about the price. You don't have to think about where Bitcoin's going in the short term. You only have to think about what you're going to do to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can because everything else in your life will be paid for. You'll be able to afford everything that you need. You'll be living a comfortable life. and Bitcoin's price will be the least of your worries at that point. So keep stacking. I don't know if we're heading to the next bear market. I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 3 years. But I do know that, let's say 5 years from now, 6, 7, 8 years from now, Bitcoin's price is going to be a lot higher than whatever it is today. So get as much as you can at these prices, because at that point, you don't want to be thinking about how you should have put more effort into accumulating more Bitcoin in 2025. If you're interested in learning more about Bitcoin, I'm running a free webinar where I teach you the buy, borrow, die strategy and how to apply it to Bitcoin. You can register for that webinar here. Just keep stacking as much Bitcoin as you can, keep creating value. I think in 10, 15, 20 years, you're not going to regret it. These dips aren't even going to register. You're not even going to remember them because there are going to be so many along the way. Your goal is just to survive through them. Most people aren't aware of this, but the CFA Institute actually investigated me for being too bullish on Bitcoin, and I tell that story in this video here.